I know that our people, Chicagoans, are tough and resilient. Chicagoans are proud of who they are, their families, and their heritage. Whether that history began here in this city or our country or some distant land. And no one should ever doubt our grit and determination. I also know that in this particular time, there are also other inescapable truths. Our people are hurting and in need of continued support and healing. A recent survey found 27% of Chicago adults lost health care during the pandemic. 33% of employed adults had reduced hours or lost pay. 28% of Chicagoans experienced food insecurity during the pandemic, and that percentage for Black and brown adults was far, far worse. And 17% of adult Chicagoans reported experiencing severe psychological distress during the pandemic, with significant numbers of adults feeling isolated, nervous, and hopeless. Yes, this most recent chapter of our Chicago history has been brutal, marked by too many stories of hardship, pain, and even death. Ushered in by the insidious reach of a global pandemic, first of its kind in 100 years, which brought with it a pandemic-sized economic meltdown, civic unrest, and unacceptable levels of violence. But we must be honest and recognize that the fault lines revealed during the pandemic were actually decades in the making, born of persistent, intentional acts dating back to the earliest days of our union and compounded and refined over time. Life expectancy gaps of 15 years or more between Black and white people in this city did not happen by chance. Lack of access to high-quality, affordable health care, which spawned the underlying medical vulnerabilities exposed and exploited during the pandemic, was not an accident of history. Lack of opportunity in jobs and education is not the fault of those victimized, and certainly not the natural order of things. Similarly, gender-based violence that has escalated to epidemic proportions in these last few years are the result of us turning away from that cold reality that violence at home spills into the streets as traumatized and victimized children of today can be tomorrow's violent adults. Rampant, unchecked opioid and heroin use that leaves some area of our city looking like a scene from The Walking Dead, don't tell me that that just rose up organically. There's a long list, which is origins and roots traceable to systemic racism, failure to invest in people and places, and none of this has happened by accident. They are two sides of the same coin and designed and forged to benefit some off the backs of others. This is intentional and must be changed. The costs have been and continue to be unacceptably high. The pre-pandemic murmurs of anger and frustration, of pain and suffering that have trapped too many in despair and denied generations the ability to realize their God-given potential. Those murmurs, my friends, are now a loud chorus, a chorus that demands our attention. Yes, that chorus sometimes sounds discordant notes, but in the yearning for something different, something better, those uplifted voices are also singing a sweet song of hope about the future and what is possible if we listen to the will of the people. A consistent refrain that I have heard is that we must be equally intentional in righting these historic wrongs. First and foremost, we must be intentional on behalf of our children. We must show up for our children from cradle to graduation so that they are set up for success in their lives' journeys, regardless of the circumstances into which they are born. We must be intentional on the side of our vulnerable residents, seniors, the homeless, the addicted, the jobless. As we have enough riches in this city to extend a hand to our brothers and sisters, our neighbors who need us. we must also be intentionally on the side of our working families. The daily struggle of so many need not be a given. It's a trap that saps people of their ability to lift their heads high, to feel like their work has actual value. Saying that we believe in the dignity of work is meaningless if that work cannot sustain a life. And it is in that environment, and a work environment that is patently unfair to the workers. We must do more for our working families. And we must keep working intentionally and persistently to eradicate poverty and create economic opportunities for people to sustain a good life and pass on wealth to the next generation. Ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, in this historic moment where we stand on the precipice of our new normal, the destiny that we will create for ourselves and future generations, we must commit ourselves to being intentional, but in a very different way than the past. Our new intentionality must include forging a new path with each other and the people we serve. As leaders, we must commit to a new set of truths, starting with the truth that equity and inclusion must be at the center of all of our work. And that in our post-pandemic recovery, no one, not anyone, can be left behind. But in order for these truths to be self-evident, to become an intrinsic part of our destiny, so that we can make real our new declaration of truth and liberation, we must find common ground. We must be united in our path forward. Unity, an obvious point, but often difficult to achieve, particularly in these times.
She gives a good speech. Good evening, friends and fellow Chicagoans. This is Jerry Vasilatos. Thank you for joining me tonight from the Night Star Lounge for another Tuesday night edition of Chicago Corner. So that was the mayor's speech yesterday. As I mentioned a moment ago, she gives a good speech. I stopped short, though, of her continuing to quote scripture and talk about how we need to follow Moses and reach that promised land. I think that was a little bit too much. But you know what, before we go into analyzing the mayor's speech address, I want to, first of all, it's Tuesday night, it's after hours, this is going to become a tradition. We've got our spirits here, right? And there's going to be a reason for this. Chicago Corner mug. I hope that you all have something close by that you can pour yourselves a drink, kick back and relax, because before tonight's show starts, I would like to drink a toast to this guy here. 85 years young this Sunday. This is my pop. And I wanted to give a quick little tribute and honor him on tonight's show. He's an artist, industrial designer, inventor, now retired, spending his golden years with his grandchildren, the rest of us, in the basement in his art studio, cranking out art that he couldn't do while he was working hard and while he was younger, to bring up our family and raise all of us. So to all of you out there that think I might be a little bit too heavy-handed in my convictions and rhetoric and think I need to tone it down, you can blame this guy here, because he's the guy who taught all of us to stand by the conviction of our thoughts and ideas. So I just wanted to very quickly share a toast to my dad, who turned 85. We're very, very lucky to still have him. And I figured that this would be a good forum, since it's my show right now, to honor him and let him know how happy we are that he's still with us and that he still has his mind at his age, a lot more than most people who are much, much younger than him in politics, public service, and otherwise. So, happy birthday, Pops. And moving on to our main coverage tonight, which was the mayor's budget address, I'm going to play a little bit of analysis from NBC5. This was from last night, and they go over some of the points that you didn't hear in that opening of Mayor Lightfoot's address. And there's a lot of interesting stuff to dive into here regarding her proposals and whether or not she's going to be able to carry them out. And as big a critic as I am of Mayor Lightfoot, what she proposed was interesting and hopeful, but whether or not she delivers and City Council delivers is yet to be determined. But anyway, let me run the segment from NBC5.
Mayor Lightfoot's budget plan for next year relies on federal funds as she looks to an improving economy post-pandemic. Political reporter Marianne Ahern joins us with more on whether this proposal will receive City Council approval. Marianne?
Rob, the budget speech is just the first step. There will be community and City Council input, so expect changes before that final vote.
We propose to do this without any new taxes, no reduction in city services, and no layoffs.
Thanks to nearly $2 billion in federal funds sent to Chicago from the American Rescue Plan, Mayor Lightfoot's budget proposal does not include a significant property tax hike. Last year, aldermen agreed to one based on the Consumer Price Index. Now only new properties will see a hike.
I think the budget is a much better budget, an easier budget than we had last year, significantly because this does not have any increase in fines and fees.
New spending includes $126 million for 5,000 low-income families to receive cash assistance. Also, $240 million for affordable housing and $52 million for mental health services.
This is basically, using federal money at its finest to fund a bunch of programs that are not going to go anywhere.
However, Lightfoot sees a brighter future, and budget expert Lawrence Masal is cautiously supportive.
I'm happy to report that our economy is definitely on the mend.
The question is, what happens when the federal relief money goes away? How will this budget be able to be sustained? How will we fund those next year budgets? It's good news for now.
The aldermen begin their budget hearing process. They're actually 1 month ahead. A full council vote expected at the end of October. From the Control Center, Marianne Ahern. Allison, back to you.
Thank you, Marianne.
All right, so to drink a toast to those proposals, I want to say this too. For all of the mayor's rhetoric about equity in the portion of the address that I opened the show with, that followed the city council deciding to vote against spending some time to examine the cannabis legislation to provide more equity to small business owners in communities and neighborhoods that have more people of color in them, more minority-owned businesses. I think the vote was those that voted for waiting to properly put this through instead of all the big corporations and big business owners benefiting from the licensing for cannabis in Chicago. I think there were like 5 aldermen that voted for holding off, and of course the rest of city council wasn't that concerned about taking some time to legislate equitably so that smaller businesses had an opportunity to take a piece of that pie. So what else is new with that? Let me open up our window here, get rid of that. All right, so I'm going to talk about some specifics on Lightfoot's cash-rich budget as Politico breaks down for us point by point. So I'm going to spend a little time. Oh, by the way, I don't have a co-host tonight, obviously, which is fine. I'm kind of getting used to flying solo here. So I am going to depend on input from my viewers in the live chat. And forgive me, I'm going to go a little bit long on reading from these articles to get into the details of the budget. But I definitely will jump into the live chat, as I am right now. Arturo Medina. I'm imagining the mayor believes she has maintained peace until the real battle that sets off the war starts. Yeah, I want to be. How do I describe myself in these situations? I describe myself as pessimistically optimistic or optimistically pessimistic. It's the only way you can deal with what was proposed here. But let me go into the Politico article, as reported by Shia Kapos. Lightfoot's cash-rich budget pitch. First in the playbook, Chicago Mayor Lightfoot is unveiling her 2022 budget proposal to the City Council today, and we've got a glimpse of how her administration plans to capitalize on the huge federal stimulus package that's coming to Chicago, which I guess is a good infusion of funds to the city that we wouldn't have had if there weren't a pandemic. It seems like this is going to allow for a lot of the proposals that we haven't been able to integrate before, like bringing the property taxes down. So she says there will be virtually no new taxes and no layoffs, and the mayor will propose a plethora of new initiatives that are possible thanks to the $1.9 billion in federal funding, a source familiar with the budget told playbook. That doesn't mean this year's budget talks will be easier than the last year, when difficult decisions had to be made about a bare bones plan. It's going to be a food fight to agree on all the proposals the mayor wants to put forward. Lightfoot's budget includes major spending, nearly $200 million, on environment and environmental justice issues, including a tree canopy equity expansion program that will see 15,000 trees planted every year for 5 years. The budget proposal includes a direct cash assistance program to help 5,000 low-income households that have been hit hardest by COVID-19. The program targets residents who live at the poverty level based on their incomes and geography within the city. It could be the largest monthly cash assistance pilot program that any city in the country. And let me also punctuate that with the fact that they were talking about this last year during the height of the pandemic, and nothing happened. Now that we've got the federal funds, it's good to see that it's going to go to those 5,000 low-income households if it's approved right in time for the election. But I guess we shouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth there, that the federal funds did come and they'll be helping some people. Watch for Lightfoot to propose a huge program focused on public safety, including a reentry program that includes workforce training and a sweep of services for those reentering the community after coming out of jail or prison. I found that this was, I thought that this was a great idea. Again, how it's integrated, how it actually is put into force, if it's approved, remains to be seen. But this is a big problem when you have people coming out of jail or prison, reintegrating with a community that doesn't want to welcome them, looks at their history, looks at the fact that they were in prison, and a lot of opportunities for people coming out trying to change their lives are not presented to them. So I hope that this is a program that actually works as opposed to just being posturing. We'll see. As the Tribune reports in its budget story, Lightfoot has said she plans to boost funding for cops after last year's spending plan cut officer positions. Okay, so this part I call bullshit, because they're pouring more and more money into the police budget, which they dipped into the federal funds last year to increase the police budget. As E. Heller and I talk about all the time, it's a Band-Aid solution. You decide you're going to throw more money at the cops instead of investing in the communities. You're not striking at the root cause of what unfortunately people drift to without any opportunities, who are desperate and don't have any other direction to go in. Here's what Ed Heller has to share. That cash assistance program was proposed by Alderman, and Lightfoot shot it down. Yeah, last year. Now that we have the federal funds, it's on the table. So like I said, I guess we shouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth, but Arturo Medina says, I truly can't believe that Lightfoot could pull this off. If she does, it will be a miracle. It will be, Art, and I'm sure that it will sweep her into the next election, potentially unopposed or opposed by weaker candidates, that she'll be able to lean on these initiatives that she's hoping that City Council will move forward. So we'll find out today what the total budget number is. I think this came from yesterday. Yes, let's see, the 20th? Yeah. So I guess Political got this information before she presented her address. But they say we'll find out what the total budget number is. Suffice it to say, big. Last year's budget was $15 billion without federal monies. Lightfoot's proposal also includes belt tightening. The federal stimulus package is a one-time gift, which means Lightfoot is looking for other areas of revenue to help the city down the road. She's calling for a $76.5 million increase in Chicago's property tax levy. The levy is the total amount the city collects in property taxes, not what individual property owners pay. This is the first time in years that a Chicago mayor has presented a budget so early. Usually, We don't hear the mayor's budget plans until well into October, but Lightfoot wants to earmark federal monies soon, and she didn't want to do it separately from the city budget, so she's combining them all into one. The mayor's office hopes to see the budget passed by the end of October. Lightfoot plans to increase Chicago's property tax levy by $76.5 million in 2022. The levy increase covers $22.9 million for automatic escalator tied to the Consumer Price Index, $25 million to bankroll the 2022 installment of Lightfoot's $3.7 billion capital plan, and $28.6 million captured from new property by Sun-Times' Fran Spielman. Food for thought. A shortage of restaurant employees put a crimp in Chicago's summertime street dining project. It was supposed to bring residents, business folks, and tourists together to dine in the sunshine so as not to worry about COVID and its Delta. Wait a minute. Oh, this isn't related to the budget story. I'm sorry. As I'm scrolling down the page, I went into other stories that Politico was reporting. My bad. Sorry about that. So one of the other things that, and I did have an opportunity to watch the whole budget address. Apparently, after she lowered the threshold of our beloved speed and red light cameras in Chicago, she said that there will be some forgiveness programs introduced that will allow people to either pay a portion of their fines or completely forgive the fines as they relate to traffic tickets, as well as the city sticker program, water bills, like one-time forgiveness allowances. And, to that I say it would be nice if bills were lowered for city services to begin with, and we got rid of these goddamn traffic cameras that she ran on saying she was going to get rid of. But she changed her mind and lowered the threshold of those speed limits so that they could quickly collect more money. So let's go into some of the response to Mayor Lightfoot's budget address. Now, this is put out by the Office of the Mayor, so I'm sure it's very slanted. But I do want to share what some people from across the city are saying, and then we will temper it with what all of you in the live chat have to share. So, the city of Chicago and its residents continue to face unprecedented challenges due to the health and economic impacts of COVID-19. Given the tough budgetary situation our city is in, we must pull together to ensure we are positioned to respond to the emerging needs and set a path towards an equitable recovery. That came from Helene Gale, president of the CEO and Chicago Community Trust. As a former mayor, I know the difficult dilemma Mayor Lightfoot faced in balancing this year's budget. We are eager to join with other community partners and work with her as she moves forward with efforts to reimagine public safety, including implementing reforms to CPD that will make Chicago a safer and more just city for everyone. That's from Karen Freeman Wilson, president and CEO of the Chicago Urban League. Dory McWhorter, CEO of YWCA Metropolitan Chicago, shares, I applaud Mayor Lightfoot for staying the course towards developing long-term solutions for Chicago's financial health and stability despite the historic pressures arising from the COVID-19 crisis. As a CPA, I deeply appreciate not only the strategic structural fixes Mayor Lightfoot put in place last year and is continuing this year, but also for her fervent commitment to doing so in a way that serves to uplift our entire city. David Cass, these are a lot of comments from, big business owners across the city. Although I think it's great that they had someone comment from the YWCA. I'm seeing a lot of financial corporation spokespeople's comments here. David Casper, U.S. CEO, BMO Financial Corporation Group. Mayor Lightfoot has the best chance of any mayor to address the long-term structural issues that face the city. She did not create any of these issues, and she is our best hope to fix them. It is my sincere hope that in the months ahead, under Mayor Lightfoot's bold leadership, we address these issues, and when we do, she will have our overwhelming support from those that want to live, work, and thrive in our great city. Let's go into the live chat. I want to hear what you guys have to say. So, Ed Heller, thank you for joining tonight in moderating and in being in the live chat. So, Ed says that cash assistance, was proposed by Alderman and Lightfoot shot it down. That was last year. We had those funds last year, but Lightfoot spent it on PD, and we have talked about that a lot on the show. Arturo Medina, Lightfoot is going to get City Hall to ticket every parking, red light, moving violation possible, and literally squeeze revenue from its citizens. Yep. Been doing that for a long time, Art. Andrew Golick, I'm not surprised. I've been going back and forth over the notion about moving back to the city from the O'Hare area. And it pretty much depends on where my work leads me. Very few opportunities related to what I'm interested in are present in the city. Yep, point taken. In this budget proposal, Mayor Lightfoot made good on her promise to be inclusive. Now, here's a question. Something I can't help but wonder. If we didn't have that big federal stimulus come in, would any of this be happening? Of course not. It seems that it's good that we've got the Fed to bail us out here, but it also speaks volumes to the fact that without this infusion of cash from the federal government, we'd probably be in worse condition because the city can't get shit together, or didn't get it together last year, which is why a lot of us are facing the property tax increases, the hikes that Cook County Assessor Kagi has presented. And by the way, we did a segment last Friday on Cook County Assessor Kagi talking about the digital economy having a big impact on why suddenly the burden of taxes is back on the rest of us, because you've got so many brick and mortar stores that are shutting down because everybody is purchasing from online suppliers like Amazon or through digital services like Grubhub. And there's been a drought of tax revenue collected from brick and mortar stores to support city services in neighborhoods across our cities. So who's got to make up the difference? It's got to be our residents. Oh, and by the way, as I opened the show honoring my dad for his birthday, I forgot to mention last week, he's the one who brought Fritz Kagi's essay to my attention. So I want to thank him for sharing some information that made it onto the show that I think was beneficial to everybody. Oh, here comes Oreo. He's looking into my drink. Let's see here. Didn't Ron make so much money, personal money, while mayor? How did he do that? Well, there are a lot of kickbacks and a lot of secret palm greasing, yeah? Art, you worked, well, I know you worked in city government and saw a lot. I don't know how much you want to share, but I'm sure we all know how Ron made so much money. Ed Heller, probably speaking fees. Ed, I think you're being kind. Well, I think you're being kind to our former mayor, the 9-digit midget. The city can't even fix a crumbling bridge. Leonard Halbert, U.S. Border Patrols are racist slave catchers and the police forces need to be defunded because of systematic racism. The Dems have gone much too far with their false race-baiting propaganda. I shared something on Facebook. Actually, as we're talking about defunding the police, let me go to my Facebook and share something that I thought was kind of relevant. And I actually got some feedback from some of my friends as I posted this meme. You're just going to have to give me a moment to pull it up. Let's see here. So I head over to my Facebook wall and I'll carry this over into the window so you can all see. By the way, would love for viewers in the audience, if you want to friend me on Facebook, would love to see you. I think that I have had a lot of our audience members friend me on Facebook, which is really cool. You can kind of see what I post day to day. It's not all politics. I post a lot of entertainment stuff, a lot of media stuff that I find is interesting. Okay, so here is the meme. And actually, I'm going to bring it over to the window. Here we go. All right. So if we defund the police and some idiot breaks into my house, how do I call the coroner directly? Or do I call the coroner directly? Now, we all know this is an idiot question. No, you would just call the police like any other time. Defund doesn't mean disband. Defund means taking away unnecessary military equipment. Defund means less caseloads for police as social workers respond to homeless and addiction problems. Defund is a blanket term for the movement of holding police accountable for their actions. Fair points, all. I do want to say also that and we've reported on this before, the city is putting funding into caseworkers joining police officers out on patrol to directly respond to issues that are not necessarily life-threatening to the police, domestic abuse situations, nonviolent situations where too often in the past we've seen some police officers escalate. But some of the comments that were on my Facebook wall in regards to that particular meme, I thought were, and I agree with these. These are very, very true. And defund the police. When we talk about defunding the police, I think we all understand what that means. All too often, I find that I have to explain it to people who think that defund means we're just going to shut down the police and anarchy is going to rule. But defund the police is an absolutely terrible, misleading slogan. Any rallying cry that has to be explained is a failure. And that came from my friend Bob Bolt on Facebook. He also says, I would have come up with police lives matter too, give them more pay, less work to do. Who would ever object to that slogan, especially the cops themselves? Win-win for all. My friend Grant Samuelson from high school always has some interesting stuff to contribute on Facebook. He responded to Bob, well said. The left shot itself in the foot with that one. It was politically tone deaf, but I also think it reflects a fundamental and somewhat unbelievable misunderstanding of the word defund. For most of us, the prefix de means to eliminate completely, as in destroy or decapitate. I still shake my head in disbelief at it. You can't do anything viable in politics if you're consistently saying, no, 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 that's not what I meant. Very, very fair points, one and all. So we're returning to the live chat. Let's see what some of you have to share. And Lennart Hallberg, thanks for sharing that comment, because it did kind of open me to remembering this meme that I thought was worth sharing. Andrew Golick. I assume that the city is focused on more corporate concerns. The village of Mount Prospect has a corporate mayor now, so I'm expecting the same type of stuff on a smaller scale here. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Anybody been through Rosemont also? Rosemont has been controlled by the Stevens family for decades now. They run the city government. It's kind of like a little gangster town, I think, with that family running things. And yeah, when you see all the corporate control of these villages and the corporate decision making, it does leave you to wonder. Oh, look who showed up in the chat. I didn't know he watched the show. There's my pop. Thanks for tuning in. One of my biggest critics, but my biggest supporters, I will say. We don't always disagree. We don't always agree on things, but when we do disagree, it's usually respectful, even if there are some heated words back and forth. The great thing about my dad is that you look at your parents and you wonder what party are they? I don't think my dad's ever been Democrat or Republican. I think he's always voted for who he felt reflected his values, as I do too. I'm not a party loyalist. I'm more in between, holding both sides accountable. So I do think that I probably got that from my dad, even though we don't always agree on what our choices are. At least we're not part of this tribal mentality. Ed Heller, developing a conspiracy theory. Reason Chicago had so many potholes during Rahm's mayorship is because a billionaire fond of potholes paid Rahm to award the road maintenance contract to Quaker Oats. And hey, Dad, Ed says hello. We don't always disagree. And Art has witnessed firsthand also that I don't always agree with my mother either. I don't know if she's watching the show, but if she is, hey, Mom. Remember how you tell me no one wants to hear what I have to think all the time? Although I'm welcome to my opinions, here we are. So here's a contribution from Dad. Old Man Stevens of Rosemont was an errand boy for the Chicago outfit. I did not know that. My dad is very knowledgeable about the Chicago outfit and the history here in Chicago and how its tentacles probably spread across all factions of our government, our city government. Let me go back to what we were talking about with the budget, although I don't know how much more I had to share specifically about people's commentary on it. The mayor's budget address is available to watch in its entirety on YouTube, and it came after a very long session where they were discussing the cannabis approval issues or ordinances for which businesses were going to get the cannabis. So let's see from the budget address. Okay, so what I have here is, I'm not an economist, but I will share some of what the budget address proposes the money goes to. And I guess you can look and I can just read off from it. Increasing safety and opportunities in the city. Violence prevention, affordable housing, homeless support services, youth opportunities, assistance to families, city priorities for health and wellness, environmental justice. Okay, and this all did come on the heels of the federal assistance we're getting. So these will be good things if they. So here's the other thing too. I'm wondering if they're going to really be able to direct all those funds to where they say it's going to go, or are they going to go to cronies and businesses that have relationships with the city and not actually get to all these good places that the mayor is proposing? I hate to be a pessimistic optimist, but I guess time will see. Equitable economic recovery, arts and culture, community and climate investments, community development, parks and infrastructure, small business and workforce support, tourism and industry support. Essential government services, maintaining and enhancing essential government services, reducing burden on taxpayers, no new taxes. I think the no new property taxes is going to be her big win if she can actually get away with that. The budget recommendations. This is a big chart to look at. Oops. All funds, $16.66 billion. They come from grant funds, corporate funds, enterprise funds, pension funds, special revenue funds, debt service funds. That's the city funds. And where they go is to general financing, infrastructure services, public safety, finance and administration, community services, city development. The smallest portions go to regulatory and legislative and elections. $733 of the $4.9 billion total corporate fund. As I understand that, it means the money that the city has or needs. $733 million estimated budget cap. They need $491 million to balance the budget. Again, I'm not a numbers person or economist. I'm just sharing what I'm reading from these charts that were released. But you can find those on Twitter, and I believe Ed Heller shared this with me when we were talking about the budget. This came from, let's see here. Let me open it up on Twitter. Stand by. So Shia Kapos, we've got details about the budget, so you don't have to slog through this at Politico. That may have been the article that I read from. So I'm clicking through. Yes, it was. So I actually read you what was reported on Politico. So Ed Heller shares the taxes were set to incrementally increase from previous budgets. That's how she can say no new taxes. Yeah, that's true. Ed, why don't you send me the WTTW article? I don't remember if you sent it to me in Slack yesterday, but I don't know. There you go. Let's open this up. I don't know if I can. Ed, if you're in private chat, can you send it to me so I can bring it up on screen and read from it? Or send it to me in Slack? That way I can pop it open and quote from it. And we can have a chat back and forth. The viewers. There he is. Good old reliable Ed. All right, let's open this up here. And I'll also share it on the screen. This comes from WTTW as we're talking all things Chicago budget. All right, let's play the video since we've got it up and hear what the mayor said after the address.
Thanks, Brandis. The devil's always in the details.
This is 13 minutes, so I think we should sit through it.
Nearly $2 billion in new spending on things from affordable housing to cash assistance for struggling families to the arts. But can these new programs be
Yes, indeed.
perennially rising pension and debt obligations? So here to talk about her $16.7 billion budget proposal is Chicago's Mayor Lori Lightfoot. Mayor Lightfoot.
So I'm going to pause this for just a second. My dad asks, he's the guest of honor tonight, so I'm going to allow him to jump in. He's going to be kind of a VIP co-host. He says, maybe I'm missing something, but just heard on the news yesterday that the mayor said there will be an increase in Chicago property taxes. There's an increase in Chicago property taxes for 2021. The mayor's proposal of no new property taxes is for next year, although they will be taxing new construction, I believe. But what she's proposing is that there will not be a property tax increase for the rest of us, if I understood it correctly. So E. Heller says the WTTW story covers a segment from Chicago Tonight. So let's go to the video. Hear it from the mayor's mouth.
Welcome. And we should mention that you're joined by your financial team, CFO Susie Park, Jenny Bennett, Budget Director and Controller Rush Massoni. We welcome you and all of you to Chicago Tonight. So, Mayor, I want to start. Actually, the spending here is about $1.5 billion over last year's budget. Will the city be able to maintain this level of spending in future years without big property tax increases?
Well, that's certainly our goal, and thank you for inviting us to be here tonight. Look, we know that in this time, we're hopefully.
Do the rest of us need a drink before she continues? I know I do.
We are finally going to be putting the pandemic in our rearview mirror, but we've got to be bold and transformative in the investment that we make to make a real difference, not only today and tomorrow, but into the future. We have real immediate needs that are met by the investments that we propose, but we also are making long-term bets on our neighborhoods in our downtown area to stimulate business activity, to make sure that we're providing jobs and opportunity.
Ed Heller adds, I don't know if you want to play this whole thing. She goes off on a rant about the gang civil asset forfeiture. You know what, Ed? I completely want to hear about her go off on that rant because as you and I discussed last week, the whole civil asset forfeiture proposal that she's presenting is bullshit because it's not going to have the proper oversight. So I'd like to hear what she has to say because it does kind of contribute to where the city is taking money from. So let's watch it in its entirety. We're only at about 43 minutes. So I'd like to hear straight from her mouth what she's going to say. Because it does relate to our previous story we reported on.
All across the city, that we are deepening our commitment to healthcare and mental health and supporting our young people and also those who are most vulnerable, our seniors, those who are currently facing food insecurity and a whole other host of issues that have been exacerbated.
See, the thing is, she does know how to use those buzzwords and dog whistles to make everybody think that these things that she claims that she cares about are going to go forward, but she ran on all these things. I think we all remember. And one of our biggest criticisms about her is that she didn't deliver. Now, maybe the federal funds are going to make a difference to fill that gap that the city mismanaged before financially to actually provide these things. I guess it's going to be up to see if city council approves it and if these things are actually implemented.
By the pandemic, we've got to do both and that's what this budget proposes.
And Mayor, there's about $1.9 billion in total from federal relief funds. About $1.1 billion of that is used to stanch some of this red ink that the city endured over about 3 years that were influenced by the pandemic. As you know, progressive alder people want more of that federal relief money to go to some of the programs you're mentioning. So will there have to be compromise in that number?
Look, I think that we have struck the right balance. We spent a lot of time from the very moment that we understood that we were going to be getting significant resources from the federal government to be responsible fiscal stewards of those tax dollars, to make sure that we were making and continuing to make interventions that got our structural budget balanced, but also really responding to the moment. There are people that are in need and hurting all over our city. That's what we talked about today, but more importantly, that's what we heard. We had very robust budget engagement, probably more than certainly in recent times, and there were very consistent themes. But the bottom line is people wanted to make sure that we showed up for them, that we were investing in them, in their families, in their communities, And I think that's what this budget does.
And Mayor, we mentioned some of these rising costs at the top. There's $250 million more in statutorily required payments to the pension funds, $275 million more for retroactive pay increases for police officers thanks to the new labor contract. Now, you and your team have said you're refinancing about $1.2 billion in debt to pay for a lot of this. Can you be more specific on how that math works?
Well, I'm going to start and then I'm going to invite our CFO, Jenny Bennett, into the team. And you can see Reshma Shani, our comptroller, Jenny Bennett, our CFO, and Susie Park, our budget director. But look, what we know is that we've got to climb our pension ramp. We're required to do that by law, and we're making great strides in doing just that to get our pensions on actuarial balance for the first time.
All right, we know all that. I'm going to go to, so Ed Heller guided me to another link where we have an opportunity to hear what some of our aldermen, the alderman reactions to the mayor's proposal. So I'm going to take Mayor Lightfoot off for a moment and get to this article on what Chicago aldermen's responses were to the budget address. The mayor's proposal sets aside $31.5 million to be used to fund a pilot program that would make direct cash payments to hard-hit low-income households in need of additional economic stability. I'm all for this, so long as it doesn't hit us in the property tax area, which we're already overpaying this year. If it comes from the federal funds and doesn't drive up property taxes, I know there are a lot of people out there in households that are hit the hardest that could definitely use those direct cash payments coming from the Fed. That would launch the largest direct cash assistance program in the United States. There's so many families that are sitting around tables like mine did with their bills spread out, like she did. What? With their bills spread out, trying to figure out how they're going to juggle the limited dollars that they have, Lightfoot said. Then a curveball happens that could lead to financial ruin. I think that that's an overreach there. I can't imagine her and the First Lady, Amy, trying to figure out how they're going to juggle the limited dollars that they have, because I think they got a lot of dollars. So Alderman Gilbert Villegas of the 36th Ward said in a separate interview with Chicago Tonight on Monday that he was frustrated that Lightfoot took a proposal that he introduced in April and incorporated it into her budget after blocking its consideration. I'm glad it's in the budget now, but we are 5 months past the introduction of the ordinance, which means that we could have been 5 months into the pilot program, Villegas said. Let's move forward so we can get cash into people's hands. Alderman Jason Irvin of the 28th Ward led efforts to block Villegas's plan for direct cash payments, saying that such a program should not move forward until the city pays reparations to the descendants of enslaved African Americans. I do have some concerns about just handing out checks to individuals in such a way without any accountability, Irvin said. I'm willing to look at it and see how it's going to improve the lives of people. Yeah. Okay. All right, Alderman Irvin. Alderman Tone Deaf. Alderman Emma Mitz of the 37th said she was pleased that the mayor included funds in her budget to help those returning to Chicago from jail and prison, as we talked about earlier, but suggested that the program get more than $10 million. The city should also beef up funds for youth programs and mental health services, Mitz said. Alderman Raymond Lopez of the 15th said the mayor's budget proposal falls woefully short Raymond Lopez. I think I saw this guy in a previous city council meeting. He just wants to shovel more money into the police department. He says the mayor's budget proposal falls woefully short of adequately funding the Chicago Police Department. This budget is basically a collection of smoke and mirrors, Lopez said. I think I'm going to bring up the aldermen's reactions from their appearance on Chicago Tonight. Let me pop up the window here. We can hear some counterpoints to everything that we already discussed with, let's see here. Got the right. No, wrong screen. Sorry. Here we go. All right, let's watch. Let's hear what some of our aldermen had to tell Chicago Tonight.
All right, thanks, Brandis. And earlier in the show, we heard from the mayor on the city's $16 billion pandemic budget helped out a bit by federal relief funds. Here's how she summed up the plan earlier today at her address before City Council.
Our ultimate goal with this recovery and resiliency budget is to recover and develop Chicago into a safer, stronger, and more prosperous city in which people can take root in, raise a family, build a business, and make a better life.
And joining us to discuss the mayor's budget proposal and other city business are Alderperson Ray Lopez, who represents parts of Chicago's South Side, Alderwoman Emma Mitz, who represents parts of the West Side, and Alderman Gilbert Villegas, who represents parts of the Northwest Side. Oh, and also Alderman Jason Irvin, who represents parts of the West Side as well. Welcome all of you back to Chicago tonight. I'll start with you.
So Irvin was also one of the aldermen who spoke on behalf of Mayor Lightfoot's civil asset forfeiture proposal last week. He's all for it.
Alderman Irvin, a lot of new spending here over last year, but no substantial tax or fee increases. Can the city keep up this level of spending without big property tax hikes over the next few years?
Well, some of the spending that's been discussed as part of the ARP funding, I do not anticipate some of the spending that's happening to continue in the out years, but the fact that we do have additional $1.8 billion over the next 3 years is definitely helping to spend on what was presented in today's budget.
And Alderwoman Mitz, $1.9 billion coming from that federal relief funding, as Alderman Irvin mentions. About $1.2 billion of that will go toward paying down debts and deficits incurred under the pandemic. Is that the right balance, or should more of it go to programs to help those affected by the pandemic?
I think that we can look at both. As we go through our budget, I'm sure that there are going to be some recommendations, and we'll have to come together to see what is it that's most needed with the consensus of the council as we change those things. So I'm looking at some things may change. Not saying that we'll pay down. That was one of the concerns. Caucus members didn't want to see all the money being used for to pay down debt. Instead, more money going to mental illness programs as it's on the rise.
So you're saying that.
So, as we continue watching some of the aldermen's reactions, and Ed, I know you said in the live chat here that I think some of the quotes are pretty much the same. I think that they do expound on some of the stuff that I shared from the article. So I'm going to let it continue, but I do want those who are in the live chat. I think we've got 11 live viewers right now. If you have any comments on what the aldermen are sharing, alder people are sharing that we can discuss here amongst ourselves, toss your thoughts into the live chat or questions or ideas, because as I'm here hosting by myself, which is fine, I really enjoy the opportunity to have more of a conversation, not a monologue here, and share what some of you are thinking so we can open it up for discussion in the live chat. So let me continue with what the alder people have to share about this, and hopefully we'll get a little bit more input from those of you who are watching in the live chat.
There's still some negotiating to do on that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that won't be the final number that the mayor unveiled today if City Council does indeed negotiate this. Let's hear from the mayor earlier today on another initiative in this budget, direct cash assistance to 500 needy Chicago families.
We also propose creating a first-of-its-kind pilot in Chicago of a monthly cash assistance program for hard-hit, low-income households in need of additional stability, as well as expand legal assistance programs through the Legal Protection Fund and Community Justice Initiative. And let me pause for a moment. This cash benefit plan for our residents, if approved, will be the largest in the history of the United States.
But remember, it's coming from the federal government, not the mayor's TIF funds. So I think that that's kind of an important point to note.
It'll actually go to 5,000 Chicago families, not 500, as I mentioned. Alderman.
And remember, the mayor's TIF funds, the slush funds, are really supposed to benefit all neighborhoods in the city, not just downtown and the Loop, where a lot of we see our TIF funds going to promote tourism, fixing up downtown, and very, very selectively allocating a little bit to the downtown area to promote tourism and fix the downtown area to attract tourists, while failing to address the inequity in all the neighborhoods that don't have business infrastructure or funding or support. A lot of these neighborhoods that our high crime because there are no opportunities because we're not investing money in the communities as we should. Anyway, I digress.
Villegas, this is something you proposed a while ago. What kind of impact do you expect this to have?
Well, thank you, Parents. So first of all, imitation is the greatest form of flattery, so I'm glad that this made it into the budget. The reality is that this is something that was proposed back in March, and actually in an ordinance format in April. I consulted with the White House, with the Biden administration, to make sure that as the rules were being done related to the expenditures, that this would be an allowed expenditure. And the White House let me know that it was, and that's why I moved forward with the ordinance. I'm glad it's in the budget now, but we're 5 months past the introduction of the ordinance, which means that we could have been 5 months into a pilot program.
So are you saying the mayor didn't really collaborate with you on this?
Oh, no, absolutely not. She did not. She just took my language and incorporated it into her budget, which is very frustrating because my staff, along with our community partners, worked tirelessly to get some language together that would ensure that we're capturing as many people as possible within the city of Chicago. This pilot program, again, I'm glad it's in the budget. I can tell you that the timing doesn't look good and looks political. And I'm very frustrated that at this time, 5 months later, she's touting that this is the largest pilot program in the country, when in fact, this is exactly what I told her 5 months ago. Let's move forward so we can get people, get cash in people's hands so that they can recover from this.
All right,
So we've got the feds bailing out the city, giving us the money so that Lightfoot can take all the credit instead of this alderman. Let's be honest.
Ray Lopez, you've had your frustrations with this administration. The budget proposal calls for $200 million more into the Chicago Police Department this year over last year. Some of that for pay raises, back pay, and some of that for increased mental health treatment. Is that the right level to help stem the violence and stem the tide of retiring police officers?
No, this budget falls woefully short, Paris, of meeting the needs and challenges of the city of Chicago.
Okay, so right now, I'm calling bullshit. Sorry, there goes the potty mouth, there goes the filter. This is bullshit. So much of last year's COVID funds went to increasing the police budget that this guy can come out and say that the police department is woefully underfunded is just absolute, utter bullshit. We know it, he knows it, but we want the appearance of security and safety. And it's too many people think that shoveling more money at the police departments is going to solve the problem. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results. We've been shoveling money into the police department for decades, for generations. We haven't been putting money into the programs that can help these communities to hopefully offer more opportunities to offset crime. And I don't want to hear any more arguments about, oh, these families, the father's gone and blah, 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 blah. Great. Father's gone in these communities. All the more reason to put money into investing in them and trying to provide opportunities for the underprivileged youths, as Jamal Green is trying to do on the South Side with his youth center that the city keeps ignoring because they want to throw the money into the fire and police training academy with a youth club on the campus. Easy to recruit new workers for both CPD and FPD. Anyway, I digress. Let me continue. Let's continue to hear Alderman Ray Lopez's line of bullshit.
I find it amazing that the number one issue facing Chicago and public safety was glossed over by this budget, which is basically a collection of smoke and mirrors and lies to the people of the city of Chicago. To say no new taxes is just a play on semantics because the city council last year approved 49 years of consecutive property tax increases in last year's budget.
Okay, that's true. And we have property tax increases this year. I'm not sure how he's not understanding the federal funds are what are going to prevent the property tax increases next year.
She doesn't need to say new taxes this year because they're automatically going to be included last year and every year for the next half century. And while we're looking at all of the investments that are on there and the things that she took credit for, many of which began under Rahm Emanuel, there's nothing new or sustainable in this budget, despite the fact that she says this is about resiliency and recovery. The last two budgets have been $1 billion short when you look at spending versus revenue. And I'm sure we will see that trend continue during in the last 2 years of our administration.
The claim that there's no new taxes has an important caveat because, of course, property taxes will rise a little bit this year because of inflation, and that was set into the law last year.
Right, Ed?
Alderman Irvin, smoke and mirrors budget here, or do these finances add up?
No, the finances are fine. The finances do add up, and I think that it's fair to state that we were in a pandemic for the last year and a half, and of course we saw revenues decline during that period. That was part of the ARP funding's necessity to replace some of the revenue that was lost. As it relates to public safety, all of the investments that have been talked about today in the budget address really go to the core of public safety, because public safety just is not police officers in the streets. There are a myriad of issues that we need to think about that create the conditions and the challenges that therefore lead to the issues of violence and the issues of concern.
Exactly.
Adding additional police officers right now, there are 1,000 vacancies, sworn vacancies approximately in the budget, and plus with the attrition of the coming year, it's impossible to even fill all of the vacancies plus all of the attrition of moving officers out of the academy at 100 or 120 per month. So this is actually a realistic budget that is being proposed, and it's real because it invests in communities as well as invests in our public safety, all of which are going to work together to better the lives of everyday Chicagoans. Also,
if it passes and it's implemented, and I hope it is. I hope it is. I've made it very clear I'm no fan of the mayor right now because I think that she speaks out of both sides of her mouth. But if this does end up passing and it's not delegated by the cronies, hopefully there might be some good that comes out of this.
As it relates to our the income pilot program that was discussed, again,
that's true, Andrew.
About just handing out checks to individuals in such a way.
Pro cop B-roll. You know your terms, Edward.
I think that's something that we need to look at to get more deep into the details of it. When Alderman Villegas and I talked about it, was not openly supportive of it, but I'm also willing to look at it and see how it's going to improve the lives of people. But at the same time, we also must talk about doing the repair of many of the years of atrocities in the communities. We look at John Bird, we look at other concerns that are actually active in Chicago.
No stock footage of social workers.
So you're talking about reparations there, Alderman Irvin. All right, Alderman Emmitz, part of those community investments, $150 million for youth programming, $85 million for violence intervention. Are these levels that are higher than typical for these kinds of programs, and can they make an impact?
I think that I'm grateful that the mayor included those programs into her budget address today. One particular one was returned citizens who have been returning home from being incarcerated. I think the 10 million that were put there probably could be raised a little more. If we could find some opportunities for that. And then when we talk about young peoples, we have to, I'm always grateful to see programs that help our youth. And I don't think we do enough for our youth.
Andrew Golick makes a good point. Too many politicians want to run government like a business. This is why Trump won, shifting the conversation to a national level. Trump won because he convinced the electorate that because he was a good businessman, even though he was full of shit about that, with all of his bankruptcies that he hid with his businesses, that because he was a businessman, he could balance the government's budget. What people fail to realize is that businesses are for profit. Government is not. These are two different models. And whenever you have somebody coming forward with a business background that says they can balance the budget because they're a business person with business experience, that comes from generating a profit for a business. And too many people lose sight of the fact that municipalities and city government are about balancing a budget to provide services to citizens who are paying taxes for city services. It's not meant to generate profits for a city. So any business person that comes forward and says they can balance a city's budget because they're business people and they know how to balance a budget because they have experience and success in business is full of it. And because you can't, city, municipalities, and governments are not about generating revenue. They're about serving the citizens and balancing a budget in a way that's not profiting all of the private interests that are doing side deals and with the city politicians or the cronies of the politicians. So, Andrew, your point is very, very well taken. Let me continue with Alderman Mitz, and then we'll bring the show to a close.
Where we throw some fun in that, it doesn't necessarily impact people's Black and brown community, particularly in the Black community. And I want to see more programs working for them. They are our future, and we have to invest into them so that they be able to get out here and get these good paying jobs and be productive citizens and have that American dream. If we don't invest in them now, when will we start to?
It's exactly what we scream about here on Chicago Corner and on Hard Lens Media. Daniel and Kit, you need to invest in the communities. You want to stop crime? You want to be able to legitimately bring down the resources you need to put into the police department? Start giving people opportunities and investing in communities instead of shifting all the money to the big businesses that are doing business in the loop, downtown, the tourist areas. Start investing in the communities in our horribly most segregated city in the nation.
So I think that's a great opportunity to start with it, and I'm grateful for it. Always looking to see where we can dig in and even do more.
All right, I'm sorry to shortchange the other two aldermen here, but we are out of time, and I did want to talk about pot shops coming to downtown, but we'll have to talk about that later in the week. Our thanks to City Council members Ray Lopez, Emma Mitz, Gilbert Villegas, and Jason Urban. Thanks so much.
Okay, so let's take that off screen. I'm not a recreational cannabis user. Haven't been ever throughout my whole life, but I guess we should do a segment on what's happening with that here in Chicago, because as I mentioned earlier, a lot of aldermen were concerned about the equitable distribution of the cannabis licenses and how the rest of the city council members just rushed it through without any concern for smaller businesses being able to get a piece of that pie, which would directly benefit these communities that we're talking about that don't have the opportunities to grow their businesses and provide opportunities. I think it's somewhat related, but that is something we'll cover in a future segment. Whatever man says these politicians are real pieces of work. Yeah, they are. And you know why they're there? Because it's the honorable people who work hard and are honest that are just completely overwhelmed with the prospect of actually successfully getting into public service because of the amount of money you need to spend in a campaign and the amount of pushback you're going to get from all the gangsters that are already in city government. Andrew Golick, the complacent and privileged often tend to blame people for their circumstances rather than mitigate the conditions that create those circumstances. Yep, we see that a lot. So listen, everybody, we're a little bit over an hour now. I want to thank you all for participating in the live stream chat so I could have some interaction with somebody instead of being a talking head here, just pontificating on my own opinions. Although my opinions are based in facts, I want to say, I don't form facts from opinions. I try to look at the facts to share my opinions. Once again, quick toast to my dad, 85 years young. Very lucky that he's still in our lives. Our whole family is very, very grateful for everything he's done for us. He's helped me in a lot of ways, and we actually partnered on a project together. We invented a product that is available through a website and on Amazon. I think I've talked about it before, but I couldn't have made that product successful, which is a mobility aid to help disabled people like myself, were it not for his expertise and skills and talents as a CAD designer. So once again, that's one of the many reasons to celebrate Mr. A.J. Vasilatos tonight. Also, I want to share this. For those of us that enjoy text messaging, my dad's master's thesis in when he was getting his master's degree was specifically on text messaging. He actually did his thesis on the creation of a text messaging platform, and this was back in I want to say the early 60s. And his thesis is in the Library of Congress now. Somebody else later developed and took the concept of text messaging further. Unfortunately, my dad didn't have the resources at the time to patent his idea and develop it, but I find it like really, really incredible that a great mind like his was able to talk about these innovations that we now enjoy, and they've actually been reflected in the record at the Library of Congress with essentially the earliest proposals for how a text messaging system could work. And I know he's very, very proud of that, and we are too. So listen, everybody, I want to thank you all for joining me tonight. If you haven't liked and subscribed, what's slowing you down? I know you have, and I know that as we're trying to get our numbers up here, just share our channel. If you have friends who are similarly minded or share some of our thoughts or opinions or analysis of the news, please share our channel link on your social media platforms. Let people know that this is a safe harbor for everybody to discuss ideas, whether we agree or disagree. I really enjoy the conversation here, and we want to grow our viewership because we're very, very close to 1,000 subscribers. And if we get 1,000 subscribers, YouTube starts monetizing us, which allows us to cover our streaming costs. So I don't have to keep saying, hey, we have a cafe press store where you can buy this stylish Chicago corner mug that makes all of your drinks much more flavorful, delicious. Anyway, if you want to support the show, you can go to our cafe press store that's linked below. Pick up a mug or a t-shirt, or just share our link if you can't afford it. I understand people are hard-pressed nowadays, and $20 mug could definitely potentially impact some people's budgets. But yeah, share our channel. Let people know about us. We are hoping to position ourselves as the Hard Lens Media viewership grows, Chicago Corner under it, to have some kind of impact and influence on the next mayoral election. We're going to be doing a lot of field segments, interviewing viable candidates. Being very fair, if Mayor Lightfoot's budget passes and these things actually help citizens in Chicago, hey, Mayor Lightfoot, prove me wrong. I want to be proven wrong, and I want these proposals that you have proposed or that you've set forth to actually be passed and help people in Chicago balance our budget, offer relief, provide more equity and fairness in executing law and order. And I do think we need to defund the police, even though that's a horrible phrase, but I'm still on the not pleased with how much money is going into the CPD program budget instead of our communities, but we've talked about that. So listen, everybody, as I've said, share the channel, like it, subscribe, share it with your friends. Join us this Friday. I don't know what our content's going to be yet, but I really enjoyed the opportunity to comment on the mayor's budget address tonight from an informed perspective, since I got a chance to watch it in enough time to prepare for the show tonight, and I think speak with some understanding of what she was proposing and analyze it from all angles. Remember, everybody, if it's happening on the streets, you'll hear about it on Chicago Corner. Be safe out there. Be vigilant. Take care of each other. And until next time, stay safe, Chicago.